Yeah, we are live anyway. Like, gonna talk about it later on another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. There we go. Hey, Kratik. Good to meet you, man. Hello, Jimmy. What's up?
Hello. How are you, Mirko?
All good, all good. As you see, I'm like my usual Overwatch background, which is blurred as heck, because I'm in Rome at the moment at my mother's house, having a good time because the weather is fabulous here. But let's say that the furniture it's a bit old, and so I said, okay, let me just have Overwatch stuff. It's cool. How about you?
I'm doing all right, and no worries on the background. I enjoy looking at Tracer and Diva, just as much as any other Overwatch fan. So no worries on that. But yeah, I'm doing great. I'm in Los Angeles for everybody who doesn't know me, which I expect is most people who are in here that aren't named Mirko. And yeah, same deal. Even though it's in the morning here, like really nice weather, and enjoying that we're finally getting to sunny days.
Cool, cool. I wish I could come to LA one day, maybe in the future. It has been 2 years that I should go to GDC and then say, okay, since I'm going to GDC, I'm gonna fly to LA and visit it. But never happened yet. So I hope next year we'll be able to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I should. Hey Alvaro, hey Omar, hey Kratik, what's up, guys?
Hey everybody.
Veterans. Yep. Well, Jimmy, like you are the MVP here, and thanks for being with us today.
Sure.
Hello, Giacomo. Basically, the whole idea is trying to talk a little bit about the magical world of outsourcing and this kind of stuff. But just to guide it through, this is an open Q&A, so folks, feel free to shoot your questions and ask Jimmy anything about basically game dev, but also specifically outsourcing. And feel free to drop in here in the comments. Meanwhile, if you want to give us like a super overview of your journey in games, because it's pretty cool and I know about it, but I like to, let people know about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So hey, everybody that's on here, thank you for joining us today. I am excited to do this because I do care about this topic a lot. I love games. I love game development, and outsourcing external development do mean a lot to me. It's kind of the world that I've lived in for over a decade. And as for my journey, after realizing about 6 years into my finance career that I can actually enjoy what I do, I went back to school and ended up working in motion capture on the business side, and turned the motion capture studio into an animation studio. We did a ton of work on games and large movies. So my background is working on AAA games. So I've worked on a number of Halos, a number of Call of Duties, Gears of War, God of War, Mortal Kombat's, like kind of the really kind of big budget games are what we really specialized in as like a high caliber motion capture and animation studio. And it was actually working on movies that made me decide, like, I love animation, I love motion capture, but I really just want to work on games. Movies are great and they're fun to go watch. They're less fun for me to work on. So I walked away from a job that I really like to work for another game studio, an outsourced studio called Roommate, to head up business development for them, bring in new clients for them, which is, again, working with the same caliber projects, the AA, AAAs of the world, before meeting my current, the person I work with most closely within the scope of my job, and getting the job that I have now, which is I work for Full Circle, which is an EA studio, and we are making the next Skate game. And between Ricky and myself, we manage all of the outsourcing that our game does, and we outsource a lot of the game. And so, very super high level. What does that even mean? In general, outsourcing or external development, you'll hear those used interchangeably, and they're basically interchangeable at this point. But outsourcing or external development is all of the work that's done outside of the internal team. And it sounds like a really generalized definition, because it is. But that literally is like, if the work is done by somebody not employed by EA, chances are very, very, very good that I have my hands on it in some way for Skate.
Gotcha. Cool. So we got a couple of questions. Thanks for the intro. Super clear. I do have a question myself, because it's I also wonder about it. So I'm curious to shoot it first. You work as an outsourcing director, if I'm not mistaken, taking care of all the outsourcing part.
Correct.
But what does it mean to work as an outsourcing manager, director? Like, do you take care of all the external relationships with other like service providers or companies? Or do you take care, for example, only of the art department, the production? Like, how does it work? Like, let me just, whatever. I wanted to spotlight it, but I think it's fine. Like, let's just shoot it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is everything. It's not just the art department. I, being more business minded than necessarily, like, my background isn't being an animator, so I don't have like the skills for the actual artwork. So I do manage more of the production that goes into the actual outsourced work. And so with Ricky, we find the vendor that we want to work with by, kind of a long vetting process, do all of the onboarding, get the internal teams buy off, which can be extremely challenging, and set up the pipeline, because outsourced pipelines look different than internal pipelines, because you don't have internal people just to like ping pong things off of most of the time. And in our space, we have review artists for all the different disciplines that we outsource. And so we try as best as we can to empower those review artists to mostly like fuel like the work that's going forward. Let them, take questions and answers that, might be outside of the, is this shot technically correct? Is this 3D model or the vertices in the right place? Like, go a bit further than that. And then if we need to step in, Ricky and I will step in. Does that kind of answer your question?
Super. Yes, definitely. And on that hand, is just one person enough to cover all the activities? I mean, it really depends on the size of the studio, I imagine, right? Like, so of course, if you are Blizzard, perhaps there are more people involved. But how about your studio? Like, because I'm super curious to understand how it works.
So one person for a studio our size, one person is absolutely not enough, which is why Ricky went out and found me after I met her. She was like, there's way too much to do. She needs basically another her and, we divide up our responsibilities pretty evenly. And it's not even that one person does more of one thing than the other. It's just kind of, if you can do it, step in and get it done. And so it really does. And there are plenty of studios that have probably 5 or 10 times the outsourced team that we have. And, those are the much bigger games that have been around for a lot longer, where they just know exactly what their seasonal content is, and they have a billion partnerships. I'm sure everybody in here knows who, like, the like studios that I'm generally alluding to. But that is how difficult it can be to just keep track of all these art assets or tools or whatever that are kind of being sent out to an external partner.
Got it. Yeah. Super makes sense. I guess it's like you don't get bored easily, I suppose.
Definitely not. I mean, there's also the side of, in outsourcing, it feels like you should get to a point of set it and forget it. And it just never really gets exactly there. There's always knobs to turn. There's always something that should be tinkered with. And there are lulls, like, and I mean lulls is like, I'm not crazy busy every single day that I show up for work. There are days that I'm busier than others. And it's just like, that's the nature of working with an external team, is that things happen, people slow down, people go on vacation, and it's just, kind of how do you adjust to that? Or if a studio was producing great work and then all of a sudden it's like they start to slip a little bit, and then you have to have the hard conversation of, hey, did you pull one of your seniors off to go, win a job? if they're working on Skate, for example, and then they want to go win whatever Fortnite, and so they pull a senior off for 2 weeks to do a test or something. And I'm not saying that this is super common, but it's definitely something I've seen before. And so that happens often enough to where the job stays interesting.
Yeah. Got it. So yeah, must be like, how can we picture it? Peculiar to try to get things done in a proper way. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get started. Scott, let's go with yours. Ayla, ciao, Scott. What advice do you have for someone who's relatively new to the gaming industry to obtain outsourcing gigs? Cool. And I like this question because from what I believe, it's relatively perhaps easier to get a gigs with an outsourcing studio compared to a AAA one at the moment, because let's be honest, everyone wants to work for AAA studios, while for outsourcing might be a little bit less, crowded in terms of competition. So this is a good one.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm going to ask a question that he didn't, I'm going to answer a question that he also didn't ask, because I also do a fair amount of career mentorship. And the first thing when people ask me about getting into games, the first piece of advice I say is look at outsourced companies. It is easier to get a job with an outsourced company than it is for a AAA studio, AA studio, or whatever. So like Scott, your question is kind of right on the mark of you are doing the right first thing, which is looking to outsourcing gigs. So there's a few things that can kind of help you. One is building a portfolio that feels real. And what I mean by that is indicating kind of what your pipeline looks like. If you're a 3D artist, put your work in progress. If you're if you're not just a 3D artist, put the amount of time it takes to do all these things. Because I have seen plenty of portfolios come through where the work is absolutely stunning. Let's just say 3D modeling. And it's like, oh, well, it took them 2.5 months to model this thing that I would expect an outsourced studio to be able to do in like 3 weeks or something like that. And so if you want to get a job with an outsourced studio, because they typically bill by the artist hour, by the artist day, man month, whatever it is, indicating on your portfolio about how long it takes you to do the thing that you're trying to sell yourself for definitely sets you apart, because very, very few people do that. Another thing is kind of pick your lane. And I know that can be hard to hear, especially when you're trying to get in, because you want to cast as wide a net as humanly possible. But really and truly, as we get into the outsourcing world that we now live in, people are picking studios for their like specific skill set. And that could be like, I might pick a rigging studio who is good at facial rigging rather than a studio that is just good at general rigging. And so when I say like pick a lane, it's like, what are you extremely good at? Make a portfolio for that and hit that part of the kind of outsource industry as hard as possible, because generalists at outsourcing studios are less and less, at least nowadays, like an interesting sell for them, where they can sell a mid-level person who's very, very good at what they do.
Love it. Can I add something here?
Yes.
This is golden advice, by the way. I always advise, especially nowadays, to go for specialization. So quality over quantity, both in terms of portfolio, but also in terms of improving your skill set and picking a niche and trying to be the best at it. Why? This is super true for outsourcing. It's usually super true for AAA, because when the team is super big, imagine you are like working as an artist on the next GTA, Assassin's Creed, whatever. Usually every artist do a very specific task. They cover a very specific niche within the art department. So they are looking for the best possible artist for that specific skill. So if you match that, your portfolio reflect that skill that they're looking for, the probability that they're going to hire is super high. So if you need to pick one route and one way, just go for the specialist way if you want to work for AAA or outsourcing. There is an exception, which in my opinion are indie games, because for indies, it's still valuable to have a generalist, because the teams are way smaller. So some indies, they need somebody that can take care of multiple stuff also, because in indies, I guess, like, they need to get shit done from various stuff, right? So if you can do various things, is good. So if you're aiming at creating your own game or joining a super small indie, then generalist is the way to go. Any other case, specialize. That's also would be my take here. So good one. All right, this is an interesting one. How to outsource qualified programmers, which we can probably translate the question to: how do you pick a good outsourcing partner for your studio, which can be including, of course, engineers or programmers? What are the criteria
for picking? Like, how do I pick who I'm going with?
Correct.
I will very, very lightly try to hit the programming side. I will be very, very honest that is the portion that I know the least about technically. I've dealt with it in my past, but that is one of the conversations that I'm like, I'm gonna let the programmers talk to programmers, and they can talk code until both sides are happy. So Nassar, please take my advice, programming wise, with a grain of salt. The number one thing that I saw that like my programming team came up against was assuming it was a red flag. So this is something to kind of avoid. But they would walk in to a discussion with a game studio with the assumption that because they have coded in the language of whatever, let's just say we're talking Unreal, which is C++. And they assume that because they've coded in Unreal that they can code for this other engine that is also based in C++, or if you're more Unity focused, C#. And like those two, it is helpful because it does show that some amount of C++ and C#, but assuming that like, I'll be able to pick up Frostbite in EA's case, like no problem because I know this language. That is not the attitude you should have going in. Understand that there are differences, even if the base language is the same, there are going to be differences, and it almost looks better for you if you just don't have experience with whatever the engine is, to go in with questions about like, here's how I would do something in this other C++ based engine. How is yours different? Or like, things like that, where you are making it very clear that you understand there's a difference and also being interested in their specific thing. That being said, that's kind of the end of where I like really understand what programmers look for in programming outsourcing. It is very, very specialized, and it is very, very difficult. It takes months to onboard a programming outsource partner. And again, I apologize, I can't answer the second one in like super in depth, but it is a little bit outside of exactly what I do.
No, that was super good. But the principle is applicable to all, fields like engineering, but also art. It's just mention the criteria of the studio and don't go in with the pretentious like, hey, we have 50 super good engineers, so we're gonna make a good work. Mm-hmm. Depends, like not necessarily true. Happened the same to me for recruitment. I was like an agent recruitment. I was an hunter, so I was working as an external recruiter, and just by the fact that I hired directors or managers for a AAA studio doesn't necessarily mean that I can do the same job for another one if I don't know the culture fit and blah blah blah. So it's pretty much the same kind of stuff.
Yep.
All right. Can I shoot questions because we have some? All right, because sometimes it might be overwhelming. Scott, are there opportunities for new outsourcing studios to be given a chance to prove themselves? Or is the typical catch-22?
That is a very good question. There are opportunities. it is getting harder. What you are getting at is kind of the nature of the outsource industry right now. And the outsource industry, especially in games, is becoming kind of this big I call it a semi-homogenized product. And what I mean by that is by my estimation, there's about 1,500 to 2,000 outsource companies that just work on games. There's probably more that kind of dabble in and out, but like by my estimation, it's around 1,500 to 2,000. And we've gotten to a point where most of those studios can do the thing that they say that they do well. So like if I'm going to an animation studio and they say we can make 3D realistic animation look like 3D realistic animation, I would bet that 80% of the time they can do that, and they can probably do it well and in like a reasonable amount of time. So that puts me, the person who's choosing, in this situation of like, I got to choose between all these capable people. And the big thing about being given a chance is it can come down to the people. A very, very big thing for me is I now choose based on people that I want to work with. And that is people that I've met for the first time, sometimes at a conference. It's very rarely like I just get a random email at some point. People that I've been introduced to, people that my colleagues have talked about that are like, this studio's great, give them a call or whatever the case may be. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is that I like the person that I'm talking to, because I treat, and a lot of game devs now treat their outsource studios as partners. And I talk to my vendors literally every week, if not more frequently. And if I have my kind of pick of the litter of these 1,500 people, I want to enjoy my time. I don't want to dread like, oh man, I got to get on another call with Mirko. Like I just like that's not the way that I want to work, because I don't have to. And so I know that I'm kind of skating around the are there opportunities? The answer is there are opportunities, and it involves getting out there, being personable, especially if you're on the BD side of things, going to conferences, and that like this is a whole other topic that I'm more than happy to talk another day about. But not showing up with your portfolio and just like, let me show you my portfolio. We have 30 minutes together. Let me show you my portfolio. Sit down, ask questions, be interesting, be interested in them, and develop an actual relationship. The relationship part of business development is a lot more likely to get a new outsource studio to be given a chance than sitting down with 50 people and spending 30 minutes showing them all your portfolio.
I love it. And by the way, guys, if you're wondering, the reason why we are talking today with Jimmy was because from my experience, I did exactly that. Like, I guess 1 year ago or basically I asked mentorship to Jimmy, because I am also like started doing some BD myself. So I was curious to learn more, understand more how it works, having some tips and tricks. So I reached out on LinkedIn to Jimmy and say, hey man, look, I'm a newbie. I just want to learn from you. Would you be open to share some tricks to somebody that is getting started? And Jimmy, as usual, is super fun and super nice, and like even today. But back then, he gave me kind of a free mentorship chat and call, and from there we developed and we built some kind of relationship that led us to today's event. So don't be afraid to ask for support, and if you show that your purpose, your goal is to learn, to get better, just go ask, because that's the best way to do so. And some people won't reply to you, some people won't tell you yes, but not because they don't want to or because they're mean or whatever. Simply perhaps they don't have time, they're busy with other stuff, they would like to do it but they forget about doing that because they have one other million things. So don't take it personal. Some people told me no, I can't, or some people ignored me, But some people would tell you yes, because this industry is very supportive, and that's the best part of it. So I am a fan of encouraging people to reach out to other people. Yep. And I'm also a fan of trying to showcase that you're willing to learn. And sometimes this can involve free work, and it works. I can, again, give another example. Don't want to monopolize here, but I think this could be worth sharing. So I do really love teaching, right? I really like it. It's something that I enjoy doing, right? But of course, I'm not qualified as a teacher. So what I've been doing while I was working as a recruiter was going to universities and says, look, guys, I kind of know how to help people, creating their CV, linking, networking, finding a job. It's my cup of stuff with, my day-to-day job as a recruiter. Would you be open to having me as a free guy that is basically explaining this kind of stuff to students for free? And they said, yeah, of course, for free. Yeah, come. So we did it, went well. I did it again and again and again. So I did at some point in 1 year more than 25 lectures in 25 different universities for free. And then at some point, a university asked me, hey, we knew what you do and we liked what you can create. Would you like to do it for us on a more consistent level and getting paid for that? I say, oh, yeah, shit, of course. That's my dream. So the way I got a professor job, which is not my main full-time job, but I do teach right now, is because I did pro bono job for a while and it went well and then, escalated. So people sometimes say, I will never work for free. I'm saying, you know what? If there is the way to showcase yourself and to prove yourself, I'm not completely against it. But of course, on a limited amount of time. But that's just my experience. Perhaps I'm like over-talking as usual. Anyway. All right. So thanks, Scott. Let's go with critic. If you need a project programmer or designer outside the team, do you give it to freelancers or partner with other gaming companies?
So again, caveat of the programming side of things. But in my experience, I don't see a ton of larger game companies giving needing small number of programmers, like where it would go to like a freelancer or something. It would tend to go through a partner company, and it tends to be more than just one person. Companies, especially larger game developers, have the option of doing temporary full-time roles, where they bring somebody on for literally a year and it's like, this is your project. And so they're not technically a freelancer anymore. And you find out about those via job boards, not via like the way that you would get freelance jobs. And same deal with a designer. That's probably freelanced a little bit more than programming is. But same deal of, if it's any kind of sizable design work, they're probably just going to look for another studio or game company that already does this, where there's a lot lower risk of something happening.
Gotcha. And I agree. Depends on the size again. Like big companies usually go for like established outsourcing studios.
Yeah.
James, how are pipelines different in outsourcing versus in-house?
So I won't get into the particulars because every pipeline is different. And we'd be here all day talking about how animation is different than 3D, which is different than 2D, which is different than rigging, and so on and so forth. But in like the kind of 20,000 foot view of it is, even if you embed your vendor into your project, they still lack the tribal knowledge that exists within your studio. And a lot of the time with outsourcing, outsourcing happens to other time zones. So feedback isn't instantaneous. It tends to be asynchronous. And if you are working on something and you hit a snag, and let's just say I'm sending the work to Mirko, he would send that to me while he was working on it last night. And then I would wake up, and at some point during my day, I would go through the snag that he hit and send him feedback. And it would typically be at the end of his day. And so I say all this because the pipeline for an internal team is constantly kind of very slightly making these small adjustments. the pipeline for outsourcing basically needs to be fully documented as best as humanly possible. I mean, there's only so many buttons and things you can click that you can put on a document that you're sending out to an outsourced studio. But it's a lot less continuous because you have this asynchronous feedback loop, where it really is like, get it as far as you can possibly get it, submit it with the caveat that like, hey, there's this thing I can't fix or I didn't know how to do. So like, I know that what this vertex is out of place. And then, 12 hours later, when that person wakes up, they will finally have feedback, can act on it. But then it's another like full day cycle before we, as the recipient, sees the like real finished version. And so there's a lot of other little things, like internal teams have the same like shared infrastructure because they're literally working probably on the same firewalls, same hardware and whatnot, and external teams tend to not. And so pulling down builds can be weird, or you might not have access to literally every tool. And so it's all these different things seem small, but when you add them up over the life of a project, like we'll have been working with outsourcers for 2 years now, and it's just like that, all those little things that add up to like a day here, a day there, you just make a different pipeline for them that is a little bit more buttoned up, and has fewer changes that the internal team may just have to take on their own. Of like, it might be too hard to make this change externally, so we'll just accept all the assets that are wrong and make the fix ourselves.
Cool. On this, I have no clue. I'm gonna just take it as it is. Okay. Omar, when does a studio choose to outsource rather than hire in-house? In your opinion, can you share a time it saved a project or nearly wrecked it or raised the bar? So some wins and losses about outsourcing versus doing it out.
Yeah. So when do we choose? Let's go with number one. When do we choose when to outsource something? It typically is. It comes down to pain points. And so when the internal team comes up against something, and the pain point could be scale, it could be like, we know we need 500 assets and we have 2 people in 3 months. Like, that is a problem that is only solved by butts and seats, like, though, because 2 of those things can't change. And so sometimes scale is one like portion of it. Sometimes specialization is a reason that we would outsource something. Earlier I mentioned facial rigging versus body rigging, and sometimes just like, our riggers are pretty good at what they do, but we just want the face to look exactly right. Let's just go hire somebody who is very, very, very good at facial rigging and let them solve this problem for us, because they've worked on 100 different facial pipelines. They can probably figure out a better way to do it than we're doing it. Speed is certainly another reason. The asynchronous nature also means that we get way more assets not during our hours than we would like while we're actually working. So we can have an internal team making some amount of assets, and this external team working while we're sleeping that's creating even more assets that just need to be reviewed by one or 2 people. So like, speed is another reason. There's certainly cost. A lot of studios outsource to like, a North American studio might outsource to Europe or Eastern Europe or Asia simply to save money. Like, the cost per man day is lower. And I mean, the literal best reason to outsource is it allows the internal team to focus on the thing that makes the game great. And whether that is polish, whether that is mechanics, whether that is coming up with whatever's next, it takes some of the busy work out of the equation, or it allows you to take some of the busy work out of the equation and allows the internal team to focus. And can I share a time when it saved a project? And yes, I absolutely can. When I was working for that animation studio, this is going to be me patting myself on the back, even though I did none of the work, but it was for Just Cause 3, and the cinematics were on fire. Like, the game had to be gold in, I want to say it was like 12 or 13 weeks, and they had, I'm gonna guess, 20 minutes worth of cinematics, which is just like an insane amount. And I won't get into how they got to where they were, but with the developer, we quickly spun up a pipeline and they just started shipping shots, and we figured out the pipeline on the fly. And literally, like on the last hour before they had to submit, we were shipping the last file back, and the game shipped with every cinematic that they intended. Now, does it look as good as Last of Us 2? No, probably not. But like when you talk about saving a project, like that game was going to ship without all of its cinematics, without outsourcing, because there's just literally no way the internal team could fix what was going on.
So when you need to do stuff fast, reliably, and to ship, that's the way to go.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Scott again, is there a market for outsourcing prototype development, or is that typically done by the internal team before they need to outsource?
So I mean, traditionally, outsourcing is like execution work. That is changing a little bit, and it does tend to be done by trusted partners. So I don't know that I've heard of a studio going out on a limb and saying like, I hear you're creative, help us make this prototype. It typically is like, you know what, you guys knocked it out of the park on whatever game we just did. We're starting to spin up part 2 or whatever the sequel is, and we want to change how we do our characters. Can you help us? Do you have like an R&D portion that can help us or something like that? Or do you have a gameplay division that can help us like kind of iterate on creating the very first like vertical slice or something like that? It requires a lot tighter of alignment because there's not like a clear deliverable. It's easier with assets. You know that if I send you a request for a tree, I expect a tree that looks generally like I asked for. But when I'm looking for like, make this game more fun than the previous one, it's like, I don't know what the heck does that mean. It requires a lot more of like, we're going to work back and forth on this, and we're going to try to like together meet somewhere in the middle. But that I think only happens when you have a partnership that already exists.
Got it. There is a cool comment.
Ninja yeah. You can see him back there too, in case you didn't think I was a fan.
No, I didn't see them.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You're the biggest fan ever.
Mm-hmm. My whole life since I was a kid.
Wow. Who's your favorite? Do you have one?
Oh, Donatello. No question.
Oh my God. Mine
no
is
question. Always has been.
Also, mine is Michelangelo. I like the blue.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Here is, I don't specifically know if it exists. I think it exists, some kind of stuff. How do you get the list of outsourcing studio for indie PC development?
I don't know that list specifically exists. It might somebody on LinkedIn probably has created something like that. I honestly point people, if you want to know like a decent starting place to learn about kind of game outsourcing in general, I send people to the sponsorship page for XDS, that's External Development Summit. Their sponsorship page you're not going to be able to sort by like indie PC development, but you'll get to see all the studios that are more or less some of the like larger players. And my guess is there's 50 or 75 of them there. So it's not like I'm only sending you to behemoths, but it is at least a decent starting place to start like seeing what studios are out there and are like active in the XDS community.
All right. On my hand, I'm curious to try one stuff. Give me the list of all the PC indie outsourcing studios. 50. I'm asking GPT whether it can produce the list. I'm curious.
Oh, nice. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, because sometimes it works. Like
yeah, outsource it to AI.
yeah. Use AI for that. It's best like usage. But now it's bugged. Perfect. So I will let you know shortly. Okay. What game dev disciplines or subset have you found out to outsource effectively?
Are harder to outsource effectively. So the less definable, like in general, the less definable the thing is as like a deliverable, the harder it is to outsource. So maybe the easiest thing to outsource is that very, very definable thing, which is like when I said, can you make me a tree? If I wanted a pine tree, I can send 1 million photos worth of reference and say, I need a pine tree that's this tall, this wide, with this kind of collision. Very, very easy to define. Very hard to define. I want like game and systems design. It's like, okay, like, what do you want designed? I don't know. You're the designer. Go design it. Like the fun part. Like there is no, that is so hard to define exactly what you're looking for. And like taking a step down from that is engineering. Like programming is very, very difficult. It's hard to outsource because there's not always a right way. Like even excellent programmers disagree on who has the cleanest code. It's just like, that's just the nature of the beast. And getting into things that are a little easier to define but are still difficult are things like UI, UX, where like you don't just get to be a good UX designer by having gone to school. You get it by having worked on for a UI UX team and understand player behavior, and you learn through time like how do you design good wireframes in the UX phase, and then what about the UI is going to pop for the specific players to the game. Like my game is skate, and that is going to be very, very different visual UI than like Call of Duty, for example. And I know that shouldn't be news to anybody on here, but again, it's not quite as easy to outsource as other arts because it requires like player knowledge, like understanding of who your player base is. And I could just like keep listing them, but in general, the harder it is to define what the output actually is, the harder it is to outsource effectively.
100%. Awesome. Credit, if a company is using an in-house game engine and suddenly there is a requirement for another designer, how many months of training will be given if outsourced?
So if it's a good studio, if it's a good outsource, if it's a game team that is serious about outsourcing using a proprietary game engine, they will probably give 2 or 3 months worth of training before expecting actual like product. Like sure, while you're training, you'll probably be producing something, but in general, I mean this seriously, any game development studio that takes themselves seriously, it should be certainly more than a month, but probably closer to 2 or 3 before you're really like, okay, we are now going to start assigning you real things in Jira, and you're going to, go off for a full sprint and make something. And it's just like their internal engines have so many intricacies to learn that it is very, very difficult to just expect somebody to show up, whether you're part of a company or a freelancer, to just show up and start, coding in C#.
Yeah, like absolutely. Another reason why I believe more and more studios are transitioning to popular engines like Unreal and Unity and Godot. From what I've observed, perhaps I'm completely mistaken. It's just, I don't know, like my take.
I don't think that you're mistaken. I think that that's absolutely right. And I completely understand the appeal of it. Like you have access to so many more people who know Unreal than they do your proprietary engine or any other third-party engine that isn't the size of, Unreal or Unity. So I totally understand it.
100%. Okay. How does production work in outsourcing? Do outsourcing companies have internal producers on their team that interface with the client? Or is that handled by the client's producers or both? Like how this topic is taken care of?
Yeah. So the answer is, in general, I would always expect the vendor to have a producer on their side. Um, in general, I don't want to tell somebody else how to most effectively run their team because I don't know any of them. Sure, I can spend a year with them and I still don't know necessarily who's best at what. And so, in general, the actual production work is on my side. I figure out what needs to be made in what time, what priority order, get all the specs from what I was talking about earlier about why it can be the different pipelines, get them all the information they need, send that over to their producer, and their producer sends, this batch of assets to this artist and this batch of assets to that artist, and they manage everything on their side. Now they do that for me, it's done in my system. We work in ShotGrid, like most studios do, but it doesn't really matter what the tracking software is, as long as I have visibility into like what pipeline step we're at. I don't particularly care what artist works on what. Like if I'm hiring a vendor, I expect them to know their team better than I do. And as long as the quality is getting hit, like I want to interact with their producer as frequently as possible and let artists be artists. They can talk internally with other artists and talk artisty things. I'm going to talk schedules, numbers, and all that stuff with the producers for the producery things.
I mean, as soon as the jobs is done, there is no need to, go into deeper details or talks or meetings. We have plenty of them already. So the important part is get shit done, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So after I've tried to put my ChatGPT response, which actually gave me a list of 50 studios, but it's kind of messed up. So guys, ignore it. Long story short, if you go on GPT and literally say, give me, I have the paid version, so perhaps that's why I got the list. So if you have the free version, you should have some free prompts already, so feel free to use it. But yeah, basically go on GPT or Perplexity, wherever, type, give me the list of 50 most common indie game development outsourcing studios. It will give you the list, just as a test. Sean, do you feel most Western game studios understand the outsourcing process well enough to successfully work with offshore outsourcing studios?
I do feel that most have now figured it out well enough, at least to outsource art. Those pipelines are pretty well understood. I think that any critique I would have would be around maximizing efficiency. And there's no naming names or anything like that, but I think that most Western studios generally understand that the days of we're just going to send a bunch of art over the fence and see what comes back over are long behind us. It's just not the way that things work. You embed teams more and more. You get artists talking to artists. You don't want artists asking me questions because I'm just going to go to my artist. Let them talk. Let them talk to somebody who actually knows what they're asking. And on top of that, we've found that when artists are talking to artists and they feel like they're part of the process, they take a stronger ownership in their work, and you just get better work out of people. It's not this like black box anymore of like, we're just going to ship this to our producer and just never talk to anybody on the development team. It's like we're talking to artists almost on the daily, or at least I see that in my Slack channels. And I do feel like most Western game studios understand that the way to get better work out of people is to start to embed them into your team rather than this like over the fence of a decade ago.
Yeah. Basically, building this partnership relationship is what's create the best results, I guess. Okay, we have a couple more. Let's try to sort them out. What consideration do you make aside from price when deciding where to work with non-American studios versus cheap offshore outsourcing?
So I hit on this a little bit in the like desire to work with somebody is definitely a big one. There's time zones matter a lot, and that I don't mean that as like, if you are so far away, then I will never outsource to you, but it's more, how much interaction do I think that I need to have with somebody on your production team on a daily basis? And does that mean you're showing up at 3 o'clock in the morning, or does that mean I'm staying up until 7 o'clock at night? Because I don't want either of those things to happen on a daily, weekly basis or so. Once a month to like quickly catch up with somebody, that's no problem. And for some people, they have people that on the team that don't mind staying up late. They have the flexibility to do so, and so it's not a big deal. But time zones do matter a lot. As far as like, you know, you throw in cheap offshore outsourcing, and I do know what you're getting at there, and there is a calculus that goes into what does cheap work look like, because it is noticeable, and sometimes it's good enough. Sometimes, like, we know if the cheap work is 95% of the way there, the last 5%, like, polish is going to be really quick. That's no problem, but that's part of the calculus, because sometimes it is cheaper, literally, for me as an outsourced producer to pay somebody $350 a man day versus somebody else $250 a man day to produce the same asset, with one that comes in a bit higher. So, you know, I almost never, when I'm looking for a new vendor, do I stick to one region, one cost center. It is not, we're not checking boxes anymore of like, okay, who has the cheapest bid? Them, check. And I'll add one more thing that I'm not certain is super ubiquitous in the industry, but I do think it's starting to get there. And that's in the testing process. When we do tests, we do production tests, not art tests. And what I mean by that is, it's not send you documentation of the thing that I want made and wait for you to come back. It's give me however many people you need to complete the test, and I'm going to make a Slack channel for you. We are going to treat this like it is production and see how you function. Because for some things, you're going to have a very buttoned up pipeline, and it's going to be a test of how well can you follow directions. And, you know, we're testing like that. And on others, this is a little more fluid, a little more designy. We're really kind of testing your creativity, your ability to like iterate very, very quickly. But same deal, the test is set up for that. And so again, what I'm looking for is the team that is going to embed most efficiently into the production, not necessarily the cheapest.
Love it. That's a very cool and structured answer, and I agree. How does the outsourcing process workflow look like
from start to finish?
Good luck.
Oh, man. How much time do we have left? I mean, that is a very, very difficult question to answer. I assume if we are talking truly start to finish, the literal beginning is establishing the need. And like I said earlier, we establish the need through the pain point. And that is, what is the pain point that we're trying to fix? Can we fix it internally? If no, okay, let's go find somebody, a studio that can fix this pain point or these pain points. Then begins the vendor exploration, which again tends to start with people that I know, and using things like XDS Spark and Game Caviar, which are kind of online lists of outsourcing studios that internal teams have access to. And so find the vendors, conduct all of my introduction calls, get pricing, all the businessy things until we get to tests. I just described how I like to do tests. Once a vendor is chosen, contracts are signed, and all that stuff is kind of behind us, then begins about 1 month worth of onboarding, at least for us. Again, we want teams embedded, and so it's getting them Confluence access, getting them Perforce access, getting them Slack accounts, getting them introduced to everybody, doing full team kind of breakdowns and intros, sending them all the documentation that they need to look through that will hopefully have been produced already, because that takes a month or two of somebody's time to put together. And once we get to the point where we're really exchanging assets, like I said, for that, I get the request from the internal team. We need 500 assets made in this amount of time. We need these assets first. I prioritize them, ship them over to the producer. The producer then makes nightly drops to us, or whenever they come off the line. And I have an internal artist, let's just say for 3D modeling, for characters. I have a character review artist who, every day looks at the previous night's asset drops and either approves them and moves them along or kicks them back for a revision. And we just kind of move through the pipeline that way until final delivery. And final delivery can be a Maya file. It can be integration into our engine. It can be kind of whatever our pipeline needs it to be. But that is taking a very, very complicated multi-month process and condensing it into, I assume, a minute and a half.
I feel like it should be hard to set it up in 1 minute, right? Like it's structure on that, but
there is a lot.
Yeah.
If it were easy, I wouldn't have a job. I'll put it that way.
The positive aspect of it. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Alrighty, guys. I don't see more questions. So if you have some more, we have a couple of minutes, so we can perhaps digest one more. Meanwhile, I would like to take this time to thank you a lot for being. I literally bombarded you with stuff, so sorry for that, but it was super, super explanatory, because not many people are talking about outsourcing, but to be honest, it's one of the, I wouldn't say easiest, but probably best ways to get into games especially if you're just getting started. So it should not be underestimated, to be honest. Yep. And there is not much materials/awareness on that. That's why I really wanted to digest this. So thanks, Jimmy. It was super nice.
Yeah, I was happy to do it. Thank you for the great questions.
No, I love it. By the way, are you coming to Gamescom or I don't?
I'm not. I'll be at XDS, but I can't make Gamescom. I got to make, unfortunately.
Intense. Yeah, because I will be there, so that would have been cool to catch up.
Yeah. Enjoy Cologne.
Yep. Guys, I do. Let me give you 1 minute just for a quick announcement, guys. So I'm organizing. I'm organizing my first on-site official Play Hire event with all the community. So for those who are coming to Gamescom, we are gonna do a live CV/portfolio review with other 10 mentors from the Play Hire community. So in case you will be attending Gamescom, please let me know either on Discord, on Play Hire, on LinkedIn, whatever you want, because we are gonna have a public event with a dedicated area, and we're gonna do free CV reviews. So bring your CV, like print it and bring it to us, because we're gonna take a look at it and also chit chat and meet up all together, which is quite cool. So that was the idea, and I don't know how it's gonna go. Hopefully, it should be fun. Let's say, ideally, it's gonna be my first time, so I'm a bit anxious about it, but should be all right. And so with that said, again, Jimmy, thanks a lot for being with us. It has been super cool. It will be my pleasure to have you again in the future. Maybe we'll talk about different stuff eventually.
For sure.
If you're up for it. And guys, thanks for coming. About the upcoming events, we are going to have very career-oriented live with Arthur, is marketing manager at Meta. So we are going to talk about how to get a job in games and or tech, and they are integrated. So it's quite good, to have an insight from someone that worked at Meta and Google. So it's pretty cool. Stay tuned. Yeah, that's it. So thanks for joining us, and see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Take care.